Good afternoon, and thank you. On behalf of Veterans in Politics, I want to thank you very much, Sam, for coming on. I'll just give you a brief background of how this process works. Each one of us will give like a 30-second introduction of ourselves. Okay. So then that way you can understand who's actually asking you the questions. Then after that, then I'll have you introduce yourself and what you're running for. And then also if you could give the boundaries for CD4 as well. Good. So I'll start. My name is Jim Jonas. I'm the Director of Veterans in Politics, and I also co-host the podcast with Steve Sanson.
I am Leah Yulianzi, the President of Active Republican Women of Las Vegas, business owner and institution.
Good afternoon. I'm Robert Faust. I am a third-generation VFW. My father was in World War II. My grandfather was in World War I, and I fought in Vietnam. I returned home to baseball, to play baseball, professional baseball, for about 10 years. I also have done some movie and advertising commercials. I published 2 books. I've authored 2 books that have been published this year. And I spent 4 years in the federal penitentiary for marijuana smuggling.
Okay, thank you, panel. With that, Sam, do you want to go ahead and give an introduction about yourself as well?
Sure. Thank you each for being here and giving me the opportunity to sit for the interview. My name is Sam Peters. I'm running for Congress in District 4. District 4 boundaries, I'll start with those. District 4 is north of Sahara and east of Rainbow. And then as it starts to go a little bit further north, it follows the 95 corridor above the Cheyenne area. Ann Road, and north of that. And then it expands widely across the valley, all the way across the east side, following Owens. And then north of that includes Lincoln County, Nye County, Esmeralda, Mineral, and a little bit of Lyon, and now a little bit of Churchill after redistricting. So it's a very big district. Again, my name is Sam Peters. I'm running for that district against Stephen Horsford. I'm a retired Air Force officer. I spent 20 years in the military. My first 10 years was as a law enforcement canine handler, and then I commissioned after earning my education. I retired as a major in 2013. I spent time in Panama, Iraq, Afghanistan, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, South Korea as well. When I retired, I joined the corporate world for a couple of years, cut my teeth as a business leader for a nationally known insurance company. I had 31 storefronts in the state of Alaska, and I realized that I wanted to try out my entrepreneurial skills and open an agency of my own. So I moved to Nevada. Lots of opportunity, lots of growth. My family and I had been coming here for about 10 years. Once a quarter or so. My brother lived in Henderson. My dad lives in Hawaii, and he comes over quite a bit. So we had family outings here about once a quarter for about 10 years before I started living here. So this was a obvious place. I'm married. My beautiful wife Melissa. We have 2 children, Connor and Callie. Callie was born here. Connor was about 1 when he got here. So all of his memories are here in Nevada. And I've got an older daughter. She's 24 years old. She's a registered nurse in Eastern Tennessee. She's actually in her master's program for her nurse practitioner degree. So I'm very proud of her. I have got a couple of dogs, a business owner, as I mentioned, and I'm running for office. This is my second time at this seat. I ran for Nevada 4 in 2020, came in second place in a very crowded primary. And the reality of it was, after I lost, the problems and the reasons that I got in the race to begin with, they didn't go away. They only got worse. So in January of 2021, I started running for this district again. We started raising money in earnest, beating the streets and just letting people know that we were still in the game and still in the fight for our country. And that's quite frankly my belief of what it is. This is a fight for our country, and we got to win or it's gone.
My first question for you is, even though I do understand that federal law states that you do not have to reside within CD4 in order to run for it.
Correct.
Do you reside in CD4?
Yes, I do. Squarely.
Okay. And
Jones and 215 on the north side.
if elected, would you be willing to advocate to change that law? Because for the life of me, I don't understand how you can understand CD4's problems if you don't reside in them. So if elected, would you be willing to work on changing that federal law?
I'd work to take a look at it. No question about it. I believe that's a constitutional rule, and changing the Constitution and increasing amendments and those kind of things is not something I generally stand for. I'd certainly take a look at it, find out where the law resides, and if it's not squarely in the Constitution, if it's a federal law, absolutely make a change. No question, yeah. But I agree with you. I'm sorry, sir. I do agree with you. No question. If you don't live in the district, you can't very well say that you're going to represent those people, because each district is different. Yes, sir. Sorry.
What party do you represent, and what religion do you?
I'm a registered Republican, and I'm a Christian, non-denominational. I'm baptized at Canyon Ridge Community Church right here in the 4th District as well.
So this is the second time that you run for CD4, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the question is, why do you think that you have a chance right now that you would win the election?
So a number of reasons, and I'll expand on not only the primary, but the general election as well. I built an incredible, again, I gave a very close second place in the Republican primary. There's a very big group of, or base of voters that supported me then, that support me now. I actually won 5 of the 7 counties when I ran last cycle. The 5 of the rural counties I won. I did not win Clark County. When I started running this race in 2021, a lot of folks from the rural counties, when I announced that I was going to run, they actually told me without asking them, they said, Sam, stay in Clark County. That's where the voting populace is. We'll take care of you up here. We'll vote for you again. We'll get the word out, let people know, but really work hard in Clark County. And that's what we've done. We haven't ignored the rural counties at all. In fact, next Saturday, I'm doing a town hall in Lincoln County. I've done town halls in Nye County, and we've been up to Esmeralda and Lyon. And we're going to do some things in all of those places. We did some polling. A couple things. We raised more money so far in this election cycle than any candidate did in the primary last cycle. We've raised, in fact, twice as much. So everybody knows that money is very important in elections. If you don't raise enough money, you can't get your word out enough. So we've raised a significant amount of money to do that in this primary. We've done some polling. The polling shows me up 19 points over my primary competitors. And that's in the primary election. For the general election, a couple of things going on there that people may not realize. This is the first time since this seat was formed in 2012. After the 2010 census, this is the first time that there's not a third-party candidate in this district. There's only Republicans and Democrats. There's only one Democrat, and it's the incumbent. I'll talk about him in a second. The winner of the Republican primary is going to take him on head-to-head. And those third-party voters, the independents, the libertarians, the nonpartisans, the Independent American Party. I've actually already reached out to the libertarians and the Independent American Party to talk to them. They generally vote very conservative. I don't believe that they're going to side with the incumbent in this case. The incumbent, he's embroiled in some scandal. His wife, in fact, has asked him not to run. And he went against her wishes. So there's a lot there. This race, we've been to DC to talk to the folks at the National Republican Congressional Committee. They're very focused on Congressional District 4, as they are the other 3 in the state. And they know we have a chance to win it and turn Nevada red again.
So, Mr. Peters, have you been elected to any prior seats in government?
I have not. I retired from the military in 2013, went straight into corporate and then into my own business, and have not. I've served on homeowners association boards. I ran a PAC for my last cycle for a little while, but as far as elected position, the answer is no.
Okay. So you said you have done some polling?
We have.
Okay. As far as how you match up to your competitors in this primary race, how about what's the number one? Well, I'm going to actually expand it. Number 1, number 2, and number 3 issues that by reaching out to the constituency in CD4, what are their 3 main priorities?
3 main priorities are the economy, jobs, and the inflation that we're seeing. That's absolutely number 1. Number 2 is immigration, the illegal immigration, the invasion of our country that they're seeing. And number 3, I believe, was the school education, family issues.
As a congressman, you would be in charge with making laws for the country. If you did, how come they can't just stand up and tell these immigrants to stop? The United States isn't accepting them until they come in, the right way. Mm-hmm. And so I wonder about what you have to say about that.
So the first thing I'll say is, and you're right, as a federal delegate, the job is to write the federal laws, but it's also to repeal the federal laws that are not constitutional, the federal creep of government into this administrative branch that we've seen, and to pull that back and go back to a constitutional conservative federal government that is not in our pocketbook, that is not focused on all of these special interests, but in fact focused on the things that the Constitution says they're supposed to be focused on, passing a budget and securing our country. To your point on securing our country, why can't they tell them to stop? They absolutely can. The problem that we are in right now, and as we're seeing with the removal of the Title 42 policy under President Biden right now, the way the laws are written, they are written with options, exemptions, and the ability of the Attorney General to make discretionary rules on the sovereignty of our country. And that's something that I want to work on. On my website, sampeters4congress.com, there's an immigration platform. There's a plan to address 11 different items on there. Birthright citizenship, removal and elimination of the visa lottery system, which is an absolute joke. And actually build the wall, shut down the border until we can get control of the people that are in our country illegally, and do it. So the short answer to your question is, why can't they? They absolutely can. The problem is they don't have the courage to do it. I do.
Okay, you brought up the wall.
Yes, sir.
As far as illegal immigration. So my specific question to you is, it's kind of frustrating to me that it seems like everybody is only focused on the southern border. So if we're going to allocate federal funds, which I'm pretty sure Trump said Mexico is going to pay for that, and that never happened. Mm-hmm. If we're going to do that, then how about would you be willing to support a moratorium on visas, basically close the borders? Mm-hmm. Because illegal immigration isn't just an issue from the southern border. Sure. We have so many people from all parts of the country or world coming in and overstaying visas. Right. If we funded the wall, would you also be willing to stop or refocus on visas to tighten up those loopholes as well?
Absolutely, I would. In fact, there's, I think it was in 2021, there was over 500,000 visa overstays, to your point. And that's one of the 11 items that's on my list on the website. We do talk about the wall because it's for timing and expediency, it's the thing that everybody knows about. But you're right. Each of our coastlines, the northern border, every international airport across our country, is a port that is being abused, and it's being abused, and it's been being abused for a long, long time. So would I be willing to have a moratorium on immigration? 100%. In fact, I think we need to shore up who in fact is in our country. So one of my endorsements that I'm proud of is the number 2 National Deputy Director of the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol from a few years ago. His name is Ron Colburn. We've had discussions, town hall discussions about what's actually happening at the southern border. And one of the discussions that we had was there's 125 miles of border that it goes unguarded for days upon days, which is where people are coming through that we have no idea they're coming through. And this has happened multiple times. It could be happening today. So shutting down that border and building the wall and actually having a moratorium. He also told me the 1.7 million illegals that came in 2021 in the last fiscal year, they represented over 100 countries. It's easy to believe that or understand that, okay, they're coming through Mexico. They must be from Central America, Mexico, South America, perhaps. They're not. Some are, but they represent over 100 countries, and over 30 of the countries that are represented are on terror watch lists. There's a significant problem there. I'll say one more thing about that. January of this year, the president of Iran declared that if we don't arrest President Trump and former Secretary Pompeo for the killing of Soleimani in Iraq, then the Islamic world was going to wage war against America. Over 30 countries have been pouring through our borders. So we're in a dire situation on immigration, and that's why it's my number one issue.
So it's not if, but when the Republicans take over or in control with the Congress, do you think they should try to impeach Biden, and on what ground?
A number of grounds. The answer is yes. He should be impeached. I believe Vice President Kamala Harris should be impeached, and I believe the Director of Homeland Security, Mayorkas, he should be impeached as well. On what grounds? The Constitution very clearly states that the executive branch of government is responsible for providing security of our country. They are absolutely failing to do it, and this, as the removal of the Title 42 policy coming up in May, it's not only an example of it, it's a direct reflection of them doing it purposely. The estimations of the illegal immigrants coming into our country after the removal of Title 42, which is Biden's plan, is to triple. It's going to triple the number of people coming in illegally. A few months back, Kamala Harris was named the czar of the border crisis. She's done nothing. In fact, she's visited El Paso from the safety of a car, and that's it. They are not doing America any justice. They do not have an America First agenda. And I will tell you that anybody serving in an elected position that swears an oath to the Constitution that's unwilling to say they are for America First should be removed.
Okay, I'm going to do a follow-up on that one.
Yes, sir.
Sam, please define for us what it takes to actually, what's an impeachable offense by a sitting president or a sitting VP? Because I'm pretty sure it's high crimes or misdemeanors.
Exactly right.
So it seems to me like you just don't like their policies, and it's not just Republicans, but Democrats that do this. So I need a specific example, legal grounds of why Biden should be impeached.
I think the Constitution is a legal document, and going against the Declaration or the Constitution of securing our country from the executive level is an impeachable offense. And not doing your job, not following federal law. I mean, use the director of the Department of Homeland Security as an example. His job is Homeland Security. He cannot say with clarity that his policies are securing the country. If there were policies on the books that I don't agree with, right? They're keeping people here for 6 weeks before sending them back. I don't like that policy. Not impeachable. They're not keeping them here for six weeks, 6 months. They're leaving the border unsecure completely. It's an impeachable offense, and I believe that again, the high crimes and misdemeanors, the House of Representatives determine whether or not it's a high crime and meets the threshold for impeachment, and then the Senate has the trial. And I believe that under a Republican House and Senate, they would be impeached for what they've done or what they haven't done.
I recently wrote a book. I read 2 books. And one of them is sort of a political thing. We were trying to get it read into Congress. And could you expound on how that takes place for a while?
How
For a bit.
what takes place?
Well, they read statements in the Congress, and we've been trying to get ours read in. We have a book. It's called Last Draftees, and it's against the draft.
Okay.
Okay, and so we would like to get our opening statement read into Congress. We've been having trouble do that.
Yeah, I think the process on that, obviously, you'd get with the group, maybe the VFW. You mentioned you were a third generation VFW. Thank you for your service, by the way. Get in with the right committee that fits the topic of the book and what you want read in, and have them present it on the floor. Presenting it to a congressman in CD4 once elected, I'd be happy to take a look at it to make sure that it's something that could possibly be read in. So yeah, we have to have advocates for people in the district and even in the state, because once elected, yes, I would be the congressman for Nevada 4, but I would represent in Washington, D.C., all of Nevada as a federal delegate. So.
Okay, Sam, here's my next question. You had brought up earlier the budget.
Yes, sir.
And it's been a long pet peeve of mine, and Democrats, Republicans are alike. Are both guilty of this. It always frustrates me that the federal budget is supposed to be proposed and passed by the end of October. That's the end of the fiscal federal year.
Right.
But it seems like every year, every administration, there's always this emergency funding bill that goes through just to kick the can down the road. If you're elected to Congress, would you be willing to stand up to your peers and explain to them, just like I have to explain my finances, the government needs to as well? Would you be willing to take on something like that?
I would, absolutely. In fact, I mentioned earlier, you mentioned something, maybe changing the Constitution. I mentioned I'm not generally for changing the Constitution from its original form, et cetera. I am for a balanced budget amendment. And a balanced budget amendment is simply the federal government cannot spend more than it brings in. The reality of it is, to your point, the federal government hasn't passed a budget since 1997. And if any of us didn't do our job since 1997, we certainly wouldn't have that job, and probably any other job. The Constitution's clear what the House of Representatives' responsibilities are, and it's budget and law. And for them to not have passed a budget, I started campaigning, as I mentioned, in 2019. When I started in 2019, I was having the same conversation and was saying our debt of $22 trillion is not sustainable. If the Fed starts raising interest rates, which they haven't done in a number of years, if they start raising interest rates, if they raise 1 point over a 10-year period, that $22 trillion is going to be $136 trillion. $136 trillion. We can't fathom, generally speaking, what 1 trillion looks like. And when you start talking 136 trillion, you have a significant problem. That was 3 years ago. Now, today, we're over $30.3 trillion in our debt. And that's not because of interest rates. That's because they've been spending so much money. Now, interest rates are going up. In fact, last month, they went up to 1/4 point. There's discussion actually breaking this morning that when the Fed meets in May, the interest rates will likely go up at least 1/4 and potentially 1/2 point. And that's 3/4 point in just 2 quarters. What's going to happen to that $30 trillion now over a 10-year period? My projection is going to be over $200 trillion if we don't get it in line. So to your point, I will absolutely stand up to my peers and tell them to knock it off.
That's an interesting point. Is like, how do you pay off this enormous debt that the United States has? And I really don't see how it's gonna come about.
Well, here's some things you don't do. You don't send $10 million to Pakistan for gender studies. You don't send the Ford theater in Washington, D.C., $25 million under the auspice that they don't fire their staff and then watch them fire their staff. And that $25 million was to pay their staff. Where did that money go? You start auditing the books. You turn that IRS that the federal government wants to focus on the citizens and audit every citizen that has over $600 in a bank account. You turn that IRS onto the government itself. They're accountants. That's what they do. They need to audit the federal government. The other piece of it is that we need to look at, and this is a much bigger project, but we need to look at the fiscal year policies. Fiscal years, for those of you who served in the military or been in federal government, and maybe even in state governments, everybody knows the fiscal year ends September 30th. And for the last 45 days of the fiscal year, they do a massive spend out. And they spend money on anything they can just to make sure that on September 30th, there's $0 in the books so they can get their budget next year. And it's absolutely criminal what's happening to American tax dollars. And that's something that I'm absolutely going to focus on.
Do you think there's any way that China would be forced to pay, some of the debt or we would take some money from them for the COVID situation?
We should. And one of the problems we have right now is they own a lot of our debt. And the fact that they're buying up our bonds and buying up the debt to the U.S. government at the same time that they're attacking us, significant problem. And it goes deeper than that. They're buying up agricultural lands. There's things that need to happen in the federal government to start taking care of citizens, to start taking care of Americans, and stop pandering to the rest of the world, because that's what's happening right now.
Okay, and to continue on with Robert's theme about, his is more financial, but it's foreign policy.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to ask you a loaded question on this one. As a member of Congress, what do you feel can be done about the War Power Act? Because I think Democrat or Republican presidents have abused this. Mm-hmm. What would you do to get control back to Congress? Now, obviously, the executive branch has emergency things they can do, but ultimately, if we're going to send troops into combat for extended periods of time, I understand Marines, it's up to 90 days, but actually, besides the Marine Corps, all the other branches, if a president commits troops after 30 days, according to Congress or according to the Constitution, he's supposed to have to go back to Congress and ask for a declaration of war or a continuance of combat operations. Sorry.
Clearly, the Congresses that we've had over the last 20 years have not been willing to exercise their authority to check the executive branch. And as a guy who's a constitutional conservative, we need to get that back in check, back in line. The founders were very clear. The judicial branch, the legislative branch, the executive branch, they're checks and balances on each other. And we find ourselves in a spot where the largest branch, with body members wise, the legislative branch, they're collectively pointing fingers and not having the courage to stand up and put the executive branch in check. They have some significant ways they can do that. To your point on the War Powers Act, they need to take the power back. And it's not just that particular act. They've given, over the last century, they've given the executive branch lots and lots of powers to make treaties, to make trade deals, to do all of these things unchecked by the legislative branch. So to answer your question, how do we fix that? We bring that power back to Congress, and we start making the committees that are responsible for those individual areas hold the feet to the fire of the executive branch. The power to do that rests in the power of the purse. And it's an unpopular reality, but it's one that needs to be exercised.
If or when you get elected, what would be the first thing that you would do to better this state, our state?
I think better the country if we could make English our official language once and for all. The Democrats and the woke ideology have been trying to cancel culture, and which is a significant issue. It goes deeper than just, the media saying, we're going to tear down some statues. When you get rid of a country's history, and this is part of the socialist agenda, the communist agenda, get rid of history, get rid of the history in schools, start teaching the kids propaganda. This takes us to a place where we're no longer the United States of America. We as a country need to take some foundational steps to define ourselves as Americans. And I think with culture specifically, it starts with language.
Okay, I do understand this would take a constitutional amendment, so I'm not going to ask you to take on that challenge because in today's political climate, I doubt it would happen. But if elected to Congress, you serve 2-year terms.
Yes, sir.
Would you be willing to say that you will not, if elected, serve more than 12 years in Congress?
Yes, I would. I'm a term limits proponent. I've signed the term limits pledge. I don't believe that we should have the term limit says 3 terms as a congressman, which is 6 years, and 2 terms as a senator, 12 years. I have no desire to be a politician like Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters, or Mitch McConnell, or some others on the Republican side, for that matter. I have a family. I want to spend time with my family, but right now the fight for America is real, and that's where my heart's at, and my family knows that. When I leave my house in the morning, to my little girl crying, it's heartfelt. And it's a reality. I'm a term limits guy. One of the things I would like to address in that realm is the 2-year terms for somebody in the House. They're on a perpetual campaign, and they get very little done, which is probably why they haven't passed a budget, which is probably why they're not holding the legislative or the executive branch's feet to the fire, all of these things. Perhaps a 3-year, in today's fast-moving world, perhaps a 3-year or a 4-year term is more appropriate.
It's interesting you say that because on the podcast, I actually proposed that.
There you
go. to increase Congress to 4. Pull the Senate back, or the House, and then pull the Senate back to 4.
Yeah, and one of the questions Robert asked earlier was, or one of the statements he made was the goal is the job is to go write laws and this and that. One of the things I'd like to do, I think we need to address the 17th Amendment and repealing the 17th Amendment. It was something that was put in place in the early 1900s it used to be, many people don't realize this, it used to be that the House of Representatives, or the state bodies, the Assembly and the State Senate, selected the senator to go to Washington, D.C., the two of them. And with the 17th Amendment, it became a popular vote statewide, and it has become a commercial enterprise, quite frankly. And, it's something we need to look at because it's done some significant damage to our country. And just if we did it today, if we repealed the 17th Amendment today, there are, I think, 30 states that are controlled by conservative Republicans, and we would have a almost supermajority in the Senate in the United States. So it's something we need to look at.
Who do you think will be the best the Speaker of the House?
President Trump. Speaker of the House. If you gave me some options, I mean, obviously Kevin McCarthy's vying for that job. There's been rumors about, when we take back the House and the Senate, we put President Trump as the Speaker because it doesn't have to be an elected member. And we impeach, and then President Trump's the president again. When I get there, I will weigh the options. I don't know that it's Kevin McCarthy. I don't know, because I don't know what the other options are.
It's not Trump.
Fair enough.
Okay, I don't have any more questions. Sam, I want to thank you for your service, Robert. Sam, I want to thank you very much for your service, and thank you very much for coming here this afternoon. And now, with that being said, this concludes the question and answer period. So why don't you go ahead and tell the viewers and listeners why they should vote for you and why you're the best person for the job, and any contact information you would like to give.
Well, thank you to the board members for the interview, the opportunity to discuss veterans in politics. Thank you for all you do for the elections in Nevada. I know you work on a lot of races, nonpartisan and otherwise, so I appreciate that very much. To the viewers, thank you for watching. I appreciate you very much to earn your vote. My name is Sam Peters. Again, I'm running for Congress in District 4. against Stephen Horsford. I'd like to earn your vote as somebody who served the nation for 20 years in the military, somebody that's raising a family in your state just like you, and cares about this country dearly, and giving our kids and our grandkids the opportunities that we had growing up. That's something that we need to focus on. All of this left agenda, this progressiveness and globalism that we're seeing, it is not a successful scenario. We can see examples of it throughout history and currently throughout the world. We are the United States. It's time to take our sovereignty back. I want to be one of the folks in Washington that truly believes that and will work hard every day to do that. I will serve you with distinction as I served in the military, and I will do it every day, do the very best I can to make you proud, to not only vote for me, but to call me your congressman and your representative. I'll be in your district, I'll visit you in your district, and I will take your voice to Washington, D.C. And with that, I'd ask for your vote. Again, my name is Sam Peters. My website is sampetersforcongress.com. My phone number is 702-843-4661. You can call me directly. I'd love to chat.
Well, thank you very much. That will conclude our endorsement interview for U.S. Congress District number 4.